When Jenny Agutter first swam naked on screen in 1971's Walkabout, audiences were stunned. The scene was raw, unfiltered, and unapologetically exposed, so much so that it left nothing to the imagination. But was it meant to titillate, or was it something more profound? The story behind Walkabout goes far beyond a controversial swimming scene.
This was a film about survival, loss, innocence, and the fragile bridge between civilization and nature.
And behind the camera was one of the most visionary directors of his time, Nicolas Roeg. Walkabout follows a teenage girl and her younger brother abandoned in the Australian outback by their suicidal father. As they struggle to survive, they encounter a young Aboriginal boy on his coming-of-age journey, his walkabout, while the Aboriginal boy teaches them to find water, hunt, and navigate the land. Cultural and emotional gaps begin to emerge, revealing a deeper message about human connection and alienation. The outback itself is not just a setting, but a character in the film, vast and indifferent, both a place of wonder and danger. Roeg was known for his distinct visual storytelling, and Walkabout was no exception. The film was largely improvised, with a shooting script of only 14 pages. Roeg's son, Luke, was cast as the younger brother, while David Gulpilil, a non-English speaking Aboriginal actor and accomplished tribal dancer, made his screen debut. Roeg's directorial style, disjointed, almost dreamlike, turned the Australian outback into a living, breathing character. The cinematography juxtaposed the stark beauty of the wilderness with the sterility of modern life, creating a poetic and often haunting visual narrative. Roeg's approach was unconventional. Rather than a structured plot, the film is built on moments, impressions, and juxtapositions, drawing the audience into a world that feels both real and surreal.
Then there was Jenny Agutter.
Cast at 15, she turned 16 before filming began. The now famous swimming scene was Roeg's attempt to depict innocence rather than exploitation. Jenny later recalled that Roeg wanted the scene to be natural, but she was deeply embarrassed. The crew was sent away, leaving only Roeg and his camera. Once the scene was completed, Jenny hurried to dress, only to watch, mortified, as the crew returned, stripped down, and jumped into the water themselves. While Jenny later defended the scene's artistic purpose, she expressed disappointment over how out-of-context clips were later misused on the internet.
The film's release wasn't without controversy. Despite its artistic intent, the nudity led to an initial R rating from the MPAA, later reduced to PG on appeal. Decades later, revised child protection laws led to a reevaluation of the film, but it remained uncut, deemed non-exploitative. Meanwhile, Walkabout struggled at the Australian box office. Critics debated its identity. Was it truly an Australian film when directed by a Brit and funded with American money? However, over time its reputation grew, earning a place among the greatest films of all time. Roger Ebert called it one of the great films, and the British Film Institute included it in their list of must-watch movies by age 14. At its core, Walkabout is a story about communication, or the lack of it. The Aboriginal boy and the white siblings never fully understand each other, not just because of language, but because of an insurmountable cultural divide. This chasm ultimately leads to tragedy. The boy attempts a courtship ritual, performing a dance for the girl, but she does not understand its meaning. The next day, he is dead. His death, never explicitly explained, becomes a symbolic moment, a loss of connection, a collapse of understanding between two worlds. Even the film's ending lingers in ambiguity. The final scene shows the grown-up girl in an apartment, her husband droning on about mundane office gossip. As he speaks, she imagines herself back in the outback, swimming freely, unburdened by the constraints of civilization. The moment is haunting. Was her time in the wild a dream? Or is her current life the illusion? The imagery suggests a loss of something fundamental,
a connection to nature, and a simpler way of living that she can never reclaim.
Beyond its themes, Walkabout was a landmark in Australian cinema. Released alongside Wake and Fright, it was part of the Australian New Wave, a movement that redefined the country's film industry. David Gulpilil, who had never acted before, became an icon, later starring in Crocodile Dundee and The Tracker. Meanwhile, Roeg's unconventional approach influenced countless directors, from Christopher Nolan to Danny Boyle. The film's experimental narrative and disjointed editing style, which Roeg would later perfect in Don't Look Now and The Man Who Fell to Earth, set a precedent for nonlinear storytelling in cinema.
The film is also a critique of modern civilization. Throughout Walkabout, Roeg contrasts the brutality of nature with the coldness of urban life. Early in the film, we see the children's father in a sterile, lifeless apartment, listening to radio chatter that seems meaningless. Later, we see the Aboriginal boy hunting and butchering an animal, an act of survival juxtaposed with scenes of a butcher in the city slicing meat under fluorescent lights. Roeg's message is clear. The industrial world has distanced itself from the raw reality of life and death, masking it behind cold, artificial structures. The film also touches on colonialism, though in an indirect way. The Aboriginal boy, despite being the one with the knowledge and skills to survive, is ultimately discarded by the white characters. His world, rooted in tradition and harmony with nature, is incompatible with the rigid, unyielding structures of Western society. His fate mirrors that of indigenous cultures worldwide, pushed aside, misunderstood, and ultimately left behind. Walkabout also holds a unique place in Jenny's career. Before this, she was known for playing innocent, wholesome roles, but this film marked a turning point. She later starred in Logan's Run, in American Werewolf in London, and The Railway Children, demonstrating remarkable range. Looking back, Jenny has expressed mixed feelings about the film. While she appreciates its artistry, she remains uncomfortable with how certain scenes have been taken out of context. As the years have passed, Walkabout has continued to gain recognition. It is included in the Criterion Collection, and many film scholars consider it one of Roeg's best works. Now it's time to hear from you. Have you seen Walkabout? Do you think the film's controversial elements were justified by its artistic vision? Let us know in the comments below.